Hello, dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we will bring you a romantic love story. So let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Rain poured down mercilessly over South Bronx, turning the street into a muddy river. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with trash. Lena, 21, wore a cracked plastic cap and a torn raincoat clinging to her body as she hurried through the downpour. Her worn sneakers slipped on the sidewalk, and the heavy canvas backpack on her shoulders was filled with aluminum cans and plastic bottles scavenged from public trash bins. She was on her way home when a horrifying sound tore through the night. Metal colliding, glass shattering, and a heavy crash like something collapsing. Lena's heart pounded. She grabbed the baseball bat tucked into the back of her pants, an essential item in this risky neighborhood, and ran toward the noise. Through the rain, a black SUV emerged, slammed into a lamppost. The front end was crushed and the windshield cracked like a spiderweb. The driver's door creaked open. Lena approached, shouting, "What? Hey, are you okay?" A man was slumped over the steering wheel, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead, staining his white dress shirt red. She shook his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" Only a faint groan replied. Lena looked around. Empty street, no one in sight. Cops and ambulances never arrived fast around here. Her old phone had run out of minutes days ago. Biting her lip, she made a decision. She tucked the bat back into her pants, opened the car door, and dragged the man out. He was tall, heavy, but Lena was used to hauling bags full of cans and bottles. She propped him up, his arms slung over her shoulders, and dragged him across the muddy street toward her apartment. His clothes, tailored shirt, dress pants, were clearly expensive, though now soaked and covered in grime. She wondered briefly, who was this man, and how had he ended up here? Lena's apartment was a cramped room in a dilapidated building, its walls stained and heater groaning uselessly. She laid him down on the floor, placing an old towel beneath him to keep the blood off the cracked tiles. Noah, her 8-year-old brother, stirred awake, rubbing his eyes. "Lena, who's that?" "Someone who had an accident," she whispered, keeping her voice steady. "Car crash. Go back to sleep." She rummaged through a tin box of first aid supplies, gauze, rubbing alcohol, a few Band-Aids. Under the weak beam of a flashlight, she wiped the blood from his forehead. The cut wasn't deep, but he was still unconscious. She bandaged it carefully and checked for other injuries. To Lena, he was just another person in need, no different than the neighbors she had shared food with or the kids she had patched up after fights. Noah peeked over the edge of the mattress. "Is he dead?" "No," Lena answered, flashing a reassuring smile. "Just passed out. He'll be fine by morning." Lena had lived in South Bronx her whole life, where dreams were buried under poverty and violence. 2 years ago, their mother had died of cancer, leaving Lena with a pile of hospital bills and Noah, who still cried for their mom every night. Lena had dropped out of community college and took on every job she could to raise her brother, collecting bottles from garbage bins, washing dishes at cheap diners, and cleaning houses across the river for wealthier families. Every day she walked miles through upscale neighborhoods, digging through bins for cans to trade for a few dollars, enough to buy milk and instant noodles. Not much, but enough to keep Noah fed, clothed, and in school. Their 10-square-meter room was all they had. The walls were stained, the roof leaked when it rained, but Lena kept it clean for Noah. She sorted the bottles from her backpack, dozens of dented ones, enough for a few dollars tomorrow. Hunger gnawed at her. She had eaten only half a peanut butter sandwich today, shared with Noah, but she didn't complain. As long as Noah was full, she could endure anything. She had no idea the man on the floor was Ethan Blake, CEO of Blake Development, a real estate empire that shaped Manhattan's skyline. She couldn't have known that saving him tonight would change her life. All she knew was the storm outside, the cold seeping through the walls, and a stranger breathing weakly beside her. Lena pulled the only blanket they had left over him. She sat cross-legged nearby, flashlight casting long shadows on the wall. The storm howled, but she didn't sleep. She listened to his breathing in the endless rain, feeling it was her duty to keep watch, to make sure he made it through the night. The weak light of dawn filtered through the cracked window, casting a dim glow over Lena's cramped apartment. The rain had stopped, leaving only a few lingering drips on the tin roof, mixing with the useless hiss of the old heater. Lena sat curled up on the floor, her back against the wall, eyes tired from a sleepless night. She was still keeping watch over the stranger lying under the thin blanket, his breathing steady but unconscious. The room was cold. The musty smell of damp walls still hung in the air. But Lena didn't mind. She was used to the cold, the hunger, and long nights filled with worry. She stood slowly, stretching her sore limbs, then checked on the man. The gauze on his forehead was clean, no fresh blood. Lena gently touched his forehead, no fever. She sighed in relief, though her mind was still full of questions. Who was he? His expensive clothes, though soaked and muddy, were nothing like what people wore around South Bronx. Last night she had searched his pockets, hoping to find a clue. Nothing. No wallet, no phone, no ID. Just a silver watch on his wrist, gleaming and sleek. The kind she'd only seen in commercials at the diner. She hadn't touched it. To her, he was just someone who needed help, not a target to exploit. Noah stirred on the old mattress, his curly hair a mess. He rubbed his eyes, glanced at the man on the floor, then looked at Lena. Is he awake yet? Not yet, Lena replied, brushing his hair gently. But he's okay. Get up. I'll make something for breakfast. She rummaged through the cabinet, pulling out their last packet of instant noodles and half a dry loaf of bread. She split the bread, giving the larger piece to Noah. Eat it. Don't stay hungry. Noah nodded, though his eyes remained fixed on the stranger. Who is he, sis? Why'd you bring him home? Lena smiled gently. I don't know. He had an accident. I couldn't just leave him there. Now eat up and get your books. School today. Noah obeyed, still curious, eyes flicking between his food and the man. Lena boiled water on their electric hot plate, adding the half-used seasoning packet and a pinch of salt. The smell of noodles filled the room, making her stomach growl, but she told herself, this is for Noah. She'd eat later, after trading in the cans for a few dollars. She glanced at the man, wondering if he'd wake before she had to leave. If not, she'd ask Mrs. Maria, the kind neighbor, to keep an eye on him. Just then, the man groaned softly. His eyelids fluttered. Lena dropped to her knees, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hey, can you hear me? Are you awake? He opened his eyes, sharp gray eyes, not foggy at all. He blinked a few times, slowly sat up, though Lena tried to hold him down. Don't move too much. You hit your head. Lie still. He touched the gauze on his forehead, wincing slightly, but his gaze remained alert. Where am I? His voice was hoarse but not weak, as though weighing every word. South Bronx, Lena answered calmly. You crashed your car last night. I brought you here. You're okay now, but take it easy. He looked around. The stained walls, Noah's old mattress, the pile of sorted cans in the corner. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked. He gave a small nod, as if trying to process everything. Lena handed him a cup of water from their old filter jug. Drink. You need it. He took the cup, his hand steady, and sipped slowly. Thank you, he said in a deep voice. You are? Lena, she replied without looking at him. And you? What's your name? He paused, eyes drifting over her face, then down to the cup in his hands. Just call me E, he said evenly. But Lena sensed the caution in his tone. She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Around here, not everyone wanted to give their real name, and she wasn't the nosy type. All right, E, she said with a hint of sarcasm. Rest up. I need to get my brother to school. Noah, still chewing bread, chimed in. Sis, is he really staying here? We don't have much room. Lena shot him a look, though her voice remained gentle. Just for now. Don't fuss. Finish eating. Ethan, looked at Noah, then back at Lena. A brief smile touched his lips, but his eyes were still intense, studying her. You don't know who I am, and you still helped me? Lena shrugged like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You needed help, so I helped. That's how it works around here. But the truth was, kindness wasn't always returned. In South Bronx, she'd learned to be cautious. But last night, she couldn't just walk away. She divided the noodles into 2 plastic bowls, handing one to Noah and placing the other beside Ethan. Eat. If you can stomach it, it's not much, but it'll fill you. Ethan looked at the bowl, then at Lena and Noah. This is your food, isn't it? His voice was quiet as if realizing something. Lena shrugged. I'll eat later. You're hurt. You need it more. He shook his head and pushed the bowl back toward her. I'm not taking food from you and the kid. You already saved me. That's enough. Lena frowned, slightly annoyed. Don't be polite. No one goes hungry here if I can help it. Eat or I'll throw it out. Noah giggled, whispering to Lena, he's weird. Who says no to noodles? Ethan finally smiled, for the first time since waking. He picked up the bowl and began to eat, spoonful by spoonful, like he didn't want to waste a drop. Lena watched him. The way he held the spoon, the way he sat. Despite the injury, there was a certain grace to him, like he came from another world. But she didn't ask. To her, he was just a stranger, and her job was to keep him alive until he left. She turned to Noah, helping him into his coat and checking his school bag. Do your homework today, okay? Don't let the teacher scold you. I'll pick you up this afternoon. Noah nodded, though his eyes still darted toward Ethan. Lena grabbed her backpack full of cans, getting ready to leave. She turned to Ethan. I'm going to sell some stuff and walk him to school. Just stay put. Don't do anything stupid. If you need help, knock on the wall. Our neighbor will come. Ethan nodded, eyes still on her. You do this every day? Collect cans? Lena shrugged. Gotta survive. Don't work. Don't eat. She didn't say more, but her eyes carried a hint of sadness. She didn't like pity, and she didn't want him thinking she was complaining. As Lena and Noah stepped out onto the still wet street, the sound of cans clinking in her backpack echoed, a reminder that her life continued, no matter who the nameless man really was. Tuesday morning in South Bronx carried a chill in the air, slipping through the cracked window frames of the apartment. Pale sunlight streamed across the chipped tile floor, highlighting the spiderweb-like cracks. Lena sat on an old plastic chair, flipping through Noah's workbook, checking if he'd done all his assignments. In the corner, the bundle of bottles and cans was tied up, ready for her to trade for cash. Noah sat cross-legged on the mattress, munching the last of a stale cracker, animatedly telling E about a basketball game at school. Ethan, now nearly recovered, leaned against a thin pillow, the gauze on his forehead clean, his eyes quietly watching Lena. For 3 days, Ethan had grown used to life in this tiny room. Noah's constant chatter, the ever-present scent of instant noodles, and Lena always in motion from morning until night. He still hadn't revealed his true identity. Ethan Blake, CEO of Blake Development, not out of distrust, but because he wanted to stay here longer, to understand the girl who had saved him with nothing but pure kindness. But he knew his time was running out. His team was surely scouring New York, and eventually they'd find him. Part of him didn't want to go back to boardrooms and flashing cameras. Lena, he told me all about fancy cars, Noah said, eyes sparkling. He knows a lot. Lena glanced up, her eyes drifting to Ethan, slightly suspicious. Really? You into fancy cars, E? She asked with a teasing tone, her lips curving just a little. Ethan chuckled softly and shook his head. Just a fan. Nothing special. He avoided her gaze, knowing he was hiding more than a hobby. But Lena didn't press, as if used to people keeping secrets in this neighborhood. She stood, grabbed a plastic water bottle from the old jug, and handed it to him. Drink. You're better now. You probably won't be here much longer. Her voice was even, but there was hesitation in it, like she wasn't sure if she wanted him to stay or go. Ethan held the bottle, his fingers tightening slightly. Lena, I told you, I owe you. Not just for saving me, but for the way you live. He paused, searching for the right words. I want to do something for you and Noah. Lena frowned, her gaze hardening. I told you, I don't need repayment. You're alive. That's enough. She turned away, checking Noah's school bag, clearly ending the conversation. Noah piped in, innocent and hopeful. But sis, he's nice. Let him help. I want a new room. No more leaks. Lena looked at Noah, her heart aching. She knew he deserved a better life, but her pride, the thing that had carried her through years of hardship, wouldn't let her accept help so easily. I'll think about it, she said gently, then took Noah's hand. Come on, it's time for school. She led Noah outside, leaving Ethan alone in the quiet room. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the muddy street. These few days had shown him a world he'd never known. People surviving on hope, Noah's carefree laughter, and Lena, a woman stronger than anyone he'd ever met. He knew he had to go back, but the thought of leaving her left him hollow. At noon, Lena returned after walking Noah to school and trading in bottles. She was met with urgent knocking. Mrs. Maria, the kind neighbor, stood at the door, eyes wide. Lena, someone's looking for that man you saved. A guy in a fancy suit, shiny car, he's downstairs. Lena's heart skipped. She stepped inside and found Ethan already standing, eyes calm but tinged with sadness. Your people? She asked evenly. Ethan nodded. Looks like it. They're faster than I thought. Lena nodded back, saying nothing. She'd known this would happen. He didn't belong here. But still, a hollow ache spread inside her. Then go! They're waiting. She led him down the creaking wooden stairs, her heart heavy. Outside, a sleek black SUV was parked by the curb. A middle-aged man in a black suit stepped forward, relief in his voice. Mr. Blake, we've been searching everywhere for you. Are you all right? Lena froze. Blake, she repeated, turning to Ethan. Not E? Ethan smiled faintly, eyes locked on hers. Ethan Blake, he said in a low voice. I didn't want to worry you. Lena shrugged, masking her surprise. It doesn't matter. Knowing or not knowing doesn't change anything. But it did. Suddenly, there was an invisible wall between them. He was from a world she only saw on TV. The man, James, Ethan's assistant, looked at Lena, then at the shabby building. You're the one who saved Mr. Blake? We're very grateful. If you need anything. I don't, Lena cut in coldly. She turned to Ethan. You can go now. Don't come back. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. Lena, I owe you my life. I can't just walk away. Let me help. A job. A home for Noah. You deserve a chance. Lena shook her head, stubborn eyes meeting his. I don't take charity. You want to repay me? Live a good life. That's enough. She turned, heading up the stairs, but Noah came running back from Mrs. Maria's, tugging her hand. Sis, listen to him. I want a new house and a playground. Lena looked at Noah, and her heart softened. She knew she couldn't trap him in this life forever, but accepting help from someone like Ethan Blake, it felt like losing herself. I'll think about it, she said quietly. Now go. Ethan nodded, but his eyes said he wasn't giving up. I'll be back, Lena. You're not getting rid of me. He gave a confident smile, revealing the presence of a man used to being in control. He stepped into the car, James closed the door, and the SUV pulled away, leaving Lena and Noah standing in the muddy street. Lena held Noah's hand, guiding him back upstairs. She told herself she wouldn't see him again. Ethan Blake, not E. She didn't know he had already etched her into his memory, that half smile, those fierce eyes, the way she mothered Noah with nothing but grit and love. In the car, Ethan stared out the window, lost in thought. James asked, Sir, office or hospital first? Office, Ethan replied. His voice was quiet, firm. And find out everything about Lena. I want to know everything. Back in the apartment, Lena sat by the window, thinking about Ethan's offer, about Noah, and all the days she'd fought just to survive. She didn't know Ethan would return, and this time, he wouldn't let her say no. The sun hovered low over the Manhattan skyline, casting golden light that reflected off the gleaming glass buildings. Lena stood outside the Blake Development Tower, her worn sneakers brushing against the spotless sidewalk, her old canvas backpack hanging loosely from one shoulder. She wore a white button-down shirt borrowed from Mrs. Maria and the only intact pair of jeans she owned, feeling utterly out of place among the stream of people in tailored suits. The building soared into the sky, its steel and glass facade like a monument to a world she had never touched. Lena took a deep breath, tightened the straps on her bag. She wasn't here for herself, but for Noah, for the promise of a better life she had made to him. 2 weeks earlier, Ethan Blake had shown up at her building unannounced, wearing that same confident smile and a look that left no room for refusal. A job, he said. Temporary assistant at my company. Do well, and I'll make sure Noah gets into a better school. Lena had refused at first, just like every other time. But when Noah clung to her, whispering about dreams of a room without leaks, she couldn't say no. She agreed with one condition. This wasn't charity. It would be a job she earned on her own terms. Now, standing in the building's lobby, her heart thumped wildly. She had never stepped into a place like this. The security guard in a crisp uniform looked her over skeptically. "Who are you here to see? Do you have an appointment?" "Lena, Lena Carter," she replied, voice a little shaky but steadying. "I'm here to see Ethan Blake. He told me to come in for work." The guard raised a brow, checked the list on his computer, then nodded. "Floor 42, elevators to your left." He pointed toward a row of gleaming elevators, and Lena walked toward them, feeling as if every eye in the building was on her. The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor, revealing a wide hallway with marble floors and abstract paintings on the walls. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and fresh coffee. Lena felt like a sparrow trapped in a golden cage. A young woman with blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail approached in a sleek pencil skirt, flashing a professional smile. "Ms. Carter, I'm Claire, Mr. Blake's assistant. Right this way." Claire led Lena past rows of desks where employees typed rapidly and exchanged jargon Lena couldn't understand. She tried to walk quickly to keep up, but her old sneakers clacked against the floor, drawing glances from a few people. She kept her head down, feeling like a stain in this otherwise perfect picture. Ethan's office was at the end of the hallway, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the Manhattan skyline. He sat behind a large wooden desk, sleeves rolled up, reviewing a file. When Lena stepped in, he looked up and smiled. "Lena, you made it. I was starting to think you changed your mind." "Almost did," she replied dryly. She stood tall, trying not to show how awkward she felt. "I'm here for Noah. So, what do I do?" Ethan stood and gestured for Claire to leave. "Take a seat," he said, pointing to the leather chair across from him. Lena sat, the cushion far too soft, far too foreign. Ethan leaned against the desk, studying her. "The job's simple. Help Claire with scheduling, filing documents, replying to emails. You're smart. I know you'll pick it up fast." Lena shrugged. "I don't know anything about that stuff. Emails, schedules. I only know how to wash dishes and collect bottles." Ethan smiled, but not mockingly. "You've survived South Bronx, raised Noah, and saved me. Compared to that, email's child's play." He slid a brand new laptop toward her. "Claire will train you. Just give it a shot. If you don't like it, you can walk away anytime." Lena stared at the laptop like it was an alien object. She nodded, though doubt swirled in her chest. "Fine, but if I screw something up, don't say I didn't warn you." "I won't," Ethan said, his eyes warm. "I believe in you." The following days were a whirlwind for Lena. Claire, who had initially kept her distance, turned out to be far more patient than Lena had expected. She taught Lena how to use email, enter data into spreadsheets, and even how to answer the phone in a professional tone. Lena fumbled, often typing the wrong thing or forgetting to save her files. But she learned quickly. She worked from morning until night, her hands more accustomed to heavy lifting, now clumsy on a keyboard. But she never gave up. Every time she felt like quitting, she thought of Noah, of the light in his eyes when she promised him a new backpack. The other employees, after their initial curiosity, began to like her. She wasn't fake, always willing to help, from grabbing coffee for coworkers to cleaning up the meeting room after hours. One day, when the printer jammed, Lena tore it apart and fixed it, leaving the whole floor stunned. "Where'd you learn to do that?" someone asked. "South Bronx," Lena replied with a shrug, and laughter erupted. Ethan watched her often, though always from a distance. He noticed the way she bit her lip when she concentrated, how her face lit up whenever she mentioned Noah, and how she kept a quiet wall between them, as if afraid to be pulled into his world. He was drawn to her, not just for the kindness that had saved him, but for the strength and sincerity he'd never seen in his own world. But he also saw that Lena never let herself fully settle. She was always cautious, always on the edge. One evening, Lena stayed late to finish organizing a scheduling chart. Ethan walked into the meeting room where she worked. You're doing great, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Claire says you're learning faster than she did when she started. Lena looked up, sliding the laptop aside. I'm just trying not to mess anything up. But this, she gestured to the glass walls, the sleek meeting table. This isn't my world. Ethan sat across from her, his gaze serious. You don't have to be like them. You're Lena, and that's why I want you here. Lena shook her head, her voice low. You don't get it. I'm here for Noah, not because I want to be an assistant or live in your world. I don't belong here. Ethan leaned in, voice deep. You don't have to belong. You just have to be yourself. That's what makes you different. Lena looked at him, her heart pounding, but she quickly looked away. She didn't want to get pulled into that gaze, into the sincerity that made her uneasy. She stood and began gathering her things. I have to go. Noah's waiting. Ethan nodded, but his eyes stayed on her. As Lena stepped out of the building, the streetlights cast her small shadow across the steel and glass. She knew Ethan was watching, and she knew she was walking a tightrope between the slums she came from and the foreign world he was trying to pull her into. But for Noah, she would keep walking, even if her heart was filled with doubt. Night had fallen over Manhattan, the lights from the skyscrapers casting a hazy glow that obscured the stars above. On the 42nd floor of Blake Development, Lena sat alone in the conference room, the light of her laptop screen reflecting off her tired face. The clock on the wall neared 10 p.m. But for Lena, time had blurred into stillness. She was struggling with a complicated scheduling chart Claire had assigned. Names, meetings, and times tangled like an unsolvable puzzle. Her fingers moved slowly across the keyboard, her eyes burning from staring at the screen too long. She sighed and leaned back in her chair, forcing herself not to think about Noah waiting at home with Mrs. Maria. 3 weeks working at Blake Development had changed Lena's daily rhythm. She no longer collected cans each morning, but the assistant job demanded a focus she wasn't used to. She had learned to organize emails, take meeting notes, and even answer the phone in a calm, professional voice. Still, each passing day left her feeling like an outsider. Her coworkers liked her for her hard work and honesty, but their curious looks and the whispers about her past kept her guarded. Ethan was the only one who didn't look at her like a stranger. He looked at her like someone he wanted to understand, and that both unsettled and confused her. Suddenly, the lights in the conference room flickered and went out, plunging the entire floor into darkness. Lena startled, her heart pounding. She heard footsteps from the hallway, then Ethan's voice, low and reassuring. Lena, you still here? Just a power outage. Don't worry. She stood up, feeling her way in the dark, bumping into the edge of the table. I'm here, she called, her voice a little shaky. Why are you still here? Ethan appeared in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted by the emergency lighting from the corridor. I stayed to review a few documents. Saw the light in here and figured it was you. He stepped inside, turning on the flashlight on his phone and casting a glow across the room. What are you still doing? Claire didn't dump that on you, did she? Lena shrugged, turning back to her now blank screen. Just wanted to finish the schedule. I'm slow. I don't want to keep people waiting. She didn't say it was because she was afraid of messing up, of being seen as unfit for the job. Ethan sat in the chair next to her, the light catching the sharp angles of his face. You're not slow. You've been here 3 weeks, and you're already keeping up with Claire. You're being too hard on yourself. Lena gave a faint laugh and shook her head. Too hard? I'm just trying not to get fired. You wouldn't understand. She paused, realizing she might have said too much. She didn't want Ethan to think she was complaining. Ethan leaned in slightly, voice steady and low. Then tell me. Help me understand. Lena looked at him. His eyes in the dark didn't judge. They simply waited. She took a deep breath, feeling the emotional walls she'd built begin to tremble. Maybe it was the darkness or the silence of the night. She didn't know, but her voice came out soft, almost a whisper. I don't belong here, Ethan. All of this, offices, computers, people in perfect clothes, it's not me. I grew up in South Bronx where people fight over a loaf of bread, where my mom died because we couldn't afford medicine. She paused, eyes distant, as if watching a painful memory unfold. When I was 12, a neighbor, he tried something. I fought him off. smashed a beer bottle over his head. He didn't die, but I got arrested. Labeled the violent girl. Since then, I've always felt like I didn't deserve anything. No good school, no real job, nothing outside the slums. Her voice trembled, but she kept her face steady, unwilling to let Ethan see her break. Ethan listened in silence, never interrupting, never offering empty comfort. When she finally stopped speaking, he simply sat there, his breath calm and steady. Then slowly, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. It wasn't forceful. He didn't pull her close, just a gentle touch, enough to say, "I'm here." Lena tensed, but she didn't pull away. The warmth of his hand, even for a second, made her feel safe, something she rarely allowed herself to feel. "You're wrong," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. "You deserve more than anyone I know. Not because you saved me, because you're Lena, the woman who never gives up, no matter how much the world tries to knock her down." Lena turned away, her eyes stinging, but she didn't let the tears fall. "It's easy for you to say, you've never lived my life." "And you don't have to live mine," Ethan replied. "You just have to be you. That's enough." The darkness seemed to close the space between them, but Lena stood up, breaking the moment. "I have to go. Noah's waiting." She gathered her things, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thanks for listening." Ethan stood too, offering her the flashlight. "Let me drive you home. South Bronx isn't safe this time of night." Lena was about to refuse, but the determination in his eyes made her nod. They left the building, stepping into the quiet street. Ethan drove a simple black sedan this time, nothing like the flashy SUV, and Lena sat in silence beside him, watching the city lights blur past. She thought about what she'd said, about his touch, and the strange feeling swelling in her chest. Like she was standing before a door she didn't yet dare to open. When the car pulled up in front of her building, Lena opened the door, but Ethan stopped her. "Lena, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Not as your boss, because I care." Lena looked at him, her heart thudding, but she only gave a small nod. "I know. Good night, Ethan." She stepped out, her figure disappearing into the narrow alley. Ethan remained in the car, watching her go. He knew he was drawn to her, not just out of gratitude, but something deeper, something he hadn't felt before. But he also knew Lena had built thick walls around her heart, and breaking through them would take more than words. Upstairs, Lena found Noah asleep on the mattress, with a note from Mrs. Maria saying he'd eaten dinner. She sat down, staring out the window at the glittering Manhattan skyline in the distance. She thought about Ethan, about the things he'd said, and about herself, a girl from the slums, standing between two worlds, still unsure which one she truly belonged to. Have you ever felt torn between where you came from and where love might take you? Comment below if you've ever faced a moment where your heart said yes, but the world said no. Morning sunlight bathed Manhattan in gold, but the 42nd floor of Blake Development was tense. Lena sat at her desk, typing quickly, preparing documents for the Midtown project, a major real estate deal led by Ethan. After 2 months, she was no longer just a temporary assistant. She helped Ethan organize meetings with partners, reviewed contracts, and took notes during key negotiations. Her co-workers respected her for her diligence and honesty, but Lena never let herself forget where she came from, the slums of South Bronx, where collecting cans once fed Noah. This job had changed her life. She had paid off her mother's medical debt, bought Noah a new backpack, and started dreaming of a leak-free apartment. But her heart was tangled because of Ethan Blake. He never pressured her, but the depth in his eyes and his quiet concern left her confused. After the night of the blackout, when he drove her home and touched her shoulder, Lena had felt a closeness she tried hard to deny. She was afraid of being pulled into his world, a world she didn't belong to. That morning, the office buzzed with whispers. A group of employees huddled around a computer, murmuring about Ethan and a scandal. Lena's heart skipped, but she kept working, until Claire, pale-faced, handed her an iPad. "Lena, read this," Claire said, voice trembling. The article from City Pulse, a notorious tabloid, was headlined, "Forbidden Love of Ethan Blake. Billionaire CEO infatuated with slum girl. Paparazzi photos showed Ethan and Lena inside his car, outside her South Bronx apartment, taken the night he drove her home after the blackout. The article read, Lena Carter, 21, assistant at Blake Development, was arrested at 15 for assault. Her father, an alcoholic, abandoned the family. Is this a Cinderella story or a stain on the Blake empire? Lena felt the blood drain from her face. Her hands trembled as she read. Old memories surged back. The drunken neighbor who attacked her when she was 12, the broken beer bottle she used in self-defense, the days she spent in juvenile detention, labeled violent. She had buried that past, but now it had been twisted, exposed, turning her into someone unworthy of Ethan. She glanced around the office. Co-workers' eyes were like needles. Some looked away, but whispers spread. Her and Mr. Blake? She assaulted someone? Seriously? Lena, are you okay? Claire asked, gently touching her shoulder. Lena didn't answer. She stood abruptly, bolted to the stairwell, and curled up on a step, hugging her knees, trying to hold back tears. The article hadn't just dragged her past into the light. It had made her a threat to both Ethan and Noah. She thought of Noah's proud eyes when she bought him new books, of Ethan's touch in the dark. She couldn't let them suffer because of her. In his office, Ethan was in a video call with business partners when James knocked, face tight. Mr. Blake, the article... He handed Ethan a phone. Ethan read in silence, his eyes darkening. Who did this? He asked coldly. Paparazzi. Could be Hudson Realty, James said. They're trying to sabotage your image ahead of the Midtown deal. The shareholders are nervous. Reporters are already outside. And your mother's on her way. Ethan clenched his fists. He knew Margaret Blake wouldn't forgive any blemish on the family's name, but all he could think of was Lena. He rushed to the stairwell and found her huddled there, pale and red-eyed. Lena, he said softly, kneeling beside her. I'm so sorry. I didn't know this would happen. Lena looked up, voice shaking. You don't understand, Ethan. They're right. I don't belong with you. I just wanted to protect Noah, but now I've put you in danger. Ethan gripped her hand, eyes steady. They're wrong. You're the best person I know. Not because you saved me, because you're Lena. You never quit. I don't care what the press says. Stay. We'll face it together. Lena pulled her hand away, shaking her head. I can't. If they find out about Noah, they'll target him too. I can't let you lose your company. I need time, Ethan. Don't follow me. He tried to stop her, but she pushed past him and ran down the stairs. Ethan stood frozen, heart aching. He returned to his office and turned to James. Find Lena. Check the security footage. Call everyone. We need to know where she went. Lena took the bus back to her apartment, hoping to find quiet to think. But as she turned onto her street, she froze. Dozens of reporters crowded the building. Flashbulbs popped. Microphones waved in the air. Lena Carter, are you dating Ethan Blake? Is it true you assaulted someone as a teen? A news van from City Pulse loomed nearby. Lena's breath caught. She looked up at the apartment window where Noah was with Mrs. Maria. If the press got in, they'd harass him, ruin his life. The building was no longer safe. Not for her, not for Noah. She backed into the shadows of a nearby alley, tears spilling freely now. She couldn't stay. She couldn't drag Ethan and Noah down with her. She pulled out her phone, voice trembling as she called Mrs. Maria. Please, keep Noah with you for a few days. Don't let the press see him. I have to go. Mrs. Maria was worried but agreed. Lena then texted Ethan, Thank you, I'm sorry, please don't look for me. She caught a bus to a modest neighborhood in the suburbs where Mrs. Maria had a friend. Holding her backpack close, she stared out the window as light rain traced patterns on the glass. She thought of Ethan, his eyes, his touch, and of Noah, her entire world. Leaving was the only way to protect them, even if it felt like she was losing herself. Back at Blake Development, Ethan read Lena's message. He gripped the phone, pain tightening in his chest. Reporters flooded the lobby, flashes erupting. Margaret arrived dressed in black silk, eyes sharp. Ethan, she said, her voice like ice, you've let this go too far. That girl is a threat. If you want to save this family's name, she has to disappear. Lena's not a threat. Ethan replied, his voice steel. She's the woman I love. If you want the Blake name, you can keep it. I choose her. Margaret stared in disbelief, but Ethan didn't wait. He rushed outside searching for Lena, but she was gone. At her apartment, he found only more reporters. And he understood. She had left to protect him. That night, he stood in his office, staring out over the glittering Manhattan skyline, thinking of her crooked smile, her fierce eyes, the way she had once shared instant noodles with him. He realized he loved her, deeply, irrevocably. But she was gone, leaving him with a hollow heart in a world spinning with rumors. In a small room on the city's edge, Lena sat by a window, watching rain fall. She thought of Ethan, of Noah, of her time at Blake Development. She knew she had done the right thing, but her heart ached like something inside her had been left behind. Manhattan still sparkled under the neon lights, but to Ethan Blake, the city felt cold and lifeless. He stood in his office on the 42nd floor of Blake Development, staring out at the skyline where the towering buildings once symbolized his success. Now they only reminded him of Lena, the girl who vanished, leaving behind a note and a hollow space in his heart. It had been a week since City Pulse had exposed Lena's past and hinted at their alleged romance, driving her to flee her South Bronx apartment under relentless media pressure. Ethan had searched everywhere, from the slums to suburban bus stations, but Lena had vanished without a trace. His office was now in chaos. Shareholders demanded emergency meetings to discuss the reputation issue. His mother, Margaret Blake, continued pressuring him, emphasizing that this scandal threatened the family legacy. The Midtown project, Blake Development's most significant deal, was at risk as rival Hudson Realty exploited the rumors to smear his name. But Ethan didn't care. He didn't care about the press, the shareholders, or the legacy. He just wanted to find Lena. He needed to tell her that none of it mattered. He only needed her. He left the office and drove back to South Bronx, to the alley where Lena had once dragged him from a wrecked SUV. The street was still muddy, the stairwell creaky as ever. The reporters were gone, having moved on when Lena disappeared. Ethan climbed the steps to her apartment and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, calling her name. Lena, are you there? Silence. A nearby door creaked open. Mrs. Maria, the neighbor, stepped out, eyeing him warily. Who are you? Lena's not here, she said sharply. I'm Ethan Blake, he replied, his voice low. I need to find her. Do you know where she went? Mrs. Maria narrowed her eyes, taking in his tailored suit and polished shoes. You're the one from the paper, right? The reason she ran. Her tone was bitter, but softened slightly when she saw the desperation in Ethan's expression. Lena asked me to look after Noah. She didn't want the boy caught in the mess. I don't know where she is now, but she mentioned a community clinic in Hunts Point. Said she used to volunteer there. Ethan nodded, hope flickering in his chest. Thank you, he said sincerely. How's Noah? Is he okay? Mrs. Maria sighed. He misses her, asks about her every day, and I don't know what to tell him. Lena did everything for that boy, you know? She didn't leave for herself. She left to protect him, and maybe you too. Ethan clenched his fists, his heart aching. He thought of Lena, how she shared instant noodles with him, helped Noah with homework, fought for everyone but herself. I know, he whispered, and I'll find her. He left the building and drove to Hunts Point, another struggling corner of the Bronx. The community clinic was tucked inside a faded brick building with torn curtains covering the windows. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic, and crying children echoed off the walls. Ethan scanned the waiting area and approached the front desk. I'm looking for Lena Carter, he said to the older woman behind the counter. Does she work here? The woman raised a brow. Lena, she volunteers, not staff. She's been here the last few days, helping dress wounds, hand out meds. But she doesn't want people to know. Who are you? A friend, Ethan said simply. I need to see her. Please. The woman studied him, then nodded toward a hallway. She's in the last room, helping a patient. Ethan walked quickly, his heart pounding. He paused outside a half-open door and peeked inside. There she was, Lena. She wore an old white blouse, gently wrapping a bandage around a young boy's arm. All done. "You were so brave," she said softly. "Just don't race through alleys next time, okay?" The boy beamed and ran out the door. Ethan stood frozen, unable to look away. Lena was still Lena, resilient, kind, always putting others first, but she looked thinner, her eyes tired, as if carrying the weight of the world. He wanted to run to her, hold her, promise to fix everything, but he didn't. Not yet. He knew she left for him, for Noah, and if he wanted her back, he had to prove he was worthy. Back in his car, his mind raced. He thought about his life, the buildings he'd built, the contracts he'd signed, the glamorous parties he'd attended. All of it felt empty. He had everything, money, power, fame, but without Lena, it meant nothing. He thought of her, homeless, heartbroken, but living with purpose, protecting Noah, helping strangers, giving everything when she had nothing. She had taught him that living meant giving meaning to others. Back at the office, Ethan called James. "Cancel the shareholder meeting this afternoon," he said. "I need time, and keep looking for Lena, but don't pressure her. I want her safe." James hesitated. "Sir, the shareholders won't be happy. And your mother—" "I'll deal with my mother," Ethan said firmly. "Just do it." That night, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at the crumpled note Lena had left behind. He thought of their nights in the cramped apartment, her laughter with Noah, the quiet strength in her every gesture. He realized Lena wasn't just someone he loved. She had changed him, transformed him from a man chasing profits to one longing to live with meaning. But now she was gone, and the emptiness she left was greater than anything he'd ever known. Across the city, in a small break room at the clinic, Lena sat under the flickering fluorescent light. Her shift had ended. Her hands trembled from exhaustion. She thought of Noah, hoping he was safe with Mrs. Maria. She thought of Ethan, his eyes, his touch, his vow to stand by her. She had left to protect him, but each night she wondered if she'd made a mistake not trusting him. Pulling out a pen and a scrap of paper, she wrote a note to Noah. "I'll be home soon, little man. Don't worry, I'm always here for you." She folded it and tucked it into her pocket, unaware that Ethan was closer than she realized, and he wouldn't stop until she came home. Would you walk away from love to protect the ones you care about most? Hit like if you believe true love finds its way, even through heartbreak. Drizzle fell gently over Hunts Point, wetting the street in front of the community clinic. Lena stood in the courtyard, wearing a thin coat, watching patients come and go. She had just finished her shift, handing out medication and bandaging wounds. A week here had drained her, but the work helped her momentarily forget the pain. Noah, Ethan, and the scandal that had driven her away. She knew Noah was safe with Mrs. Maria, but every night she thought of his eyes, of the promise she made to come back. She also thought of Ethan, his gaze, his touch, and wondered if she had been wrong not to trust him. Ethan Blake stood not far away, under a canopy, rain soaking through his black suit. He had come to the clinic that morning determined to face Lena. James had reported that a City Pulse reporter was lurking nearby, likely still chasing the scandal. Ethan didn't care. Today he would say what needed to be said, even if the whole world was watching. He walked across the courtyard and saw Lena standing there, small and vulnerable in the rain. "Lena!" he called, his voice deep and steady above the falling rain. Lena turned around, stunned. "Ethan? What? What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled, eyes wide. "I came to find you," Ethan said, stepping closer. "You think I'd let you go that easily? After everything we've been through?" Lena backed away, shaking her head. "You shouldn't be here. The press, your company, Noah. I've only made things worse." Ethan dropped to one knee, right in the middle of the courtyard, mud soaking into his trousers. A reporter nearby raised a camera, flash flickering, but Ethan didn't stop. "Lena, I don't care about the press or the company," he said firmly. "You think you're not good enough? I'm the one who doesn't deserve you. Your kindness, your strength, the way you live for Noah. I love you, Lena. I choose you, no matter what the world says." Lena burst into tears, rain mixing with her sobs. "Ethan, you're crazy. They'll never leave us alone. Noah will get hurt, and you'll lose everything." They don't get to decide our fate, Ethan said, rising to his feet and taking her hand. I promise I'll protect you and Noah. I can't promise the world, but I can promise I'll be there. Just then, Noah ran out of the clinic, his shiny blue raincoat flapping. Lena, he shouted, throwing his arms around her. Mrs. Maria followed, panting. He insisted on seeing you. I couldn't stop him. Lena knelt, hugging Noah tightly, sobbing. I'm so sorry, kiddo. I'm here. She looked up at Ethan, who was smiling, eyes shining. Noah ran over and hugged him. You found her! Ethan pulled both of them into his arms, rain falling around them. We're a family, he said. No one's tearing us apart. The reporter kept snapping photos, shouting, Mr. Blake, is this your girlfriend? Ethan looked straight into the lens, voice ringing out. She's not unworthy of me. I'm unworthy of her. Lena leaned against Ethan, feeling truly safe for the first time. She knew the press wouldn't stop, that his mother would disapprove. But with Ethan and Noah beside her, she was ready to face it all. Thank you, she whispered, for finding me. Ethan kissed her forehead. You're my whole world, Lena. They stood there, three people in the rain, a promise that no matter how the world turned, they would always have each other. The rain had stopped in Hunts Point, leaving puddles shimmering beneath the streetlights. Lena stood outside a modest house in a working-class neighborhood near the community clinic, clutching a key. The small brick house with faded walls and a tiny yard was the place Ethan had rented for her and Noah after they reunited. It wasn't a luxury Manhattan apartment, but it was warm, dry, and gave Noah his own room. No more leaky ceilings. Lena looked at it with a mix of gratitude and worry. This new life, however humble, still felt like she was straddling two worlds. The slum where she grew up, and Ethan's world of endless pressure and flashing cameras. It had been a week since Ethan knelt before her in the rain, declaring his love in front of flashing cameras. A new article from City Pulse, Ethan Blake Chooses Love, Defies All Expectations, spread across New York, accompanied by photos of him holding her in Noah's hands. The public was divided. Some called it a fairy tale. Others mocked Ethan for stooping down to a slum girl. Blake Development's shareholders were rattled, and his mother, Margaret, issued an ultimatum demanding he end this charade. But Ethan stood firm. He moved into a small apartment near Hunts Point, refused to return to his Manhattan penthouse, and spent every day with Lena and Noah. Lena stepped inside and found Noah sitting on the living room floor, drawing a spaceship in a new notebook. He looked up and grinned. Lena, he said he's taking me to the park tomorrow. There's a basketball court, too. Lena smiled, tousling his hair. Really? Just don't mess up your new shirt, okay? She looked around. The house was simple but clean, with a wooden table Ethan had bought and curtains Mrs. Maria had gifted. It was nothing like their old rundown apartment where she worried about every meal. Still, she couldn't shake the unease. The media still hovered, and she feared this happiness was fragile. Ethan walked in, sleeves rolled up, holding a bag of groceries. Dinner's on me tonight, he announced, winking at Noah. Spaghetti, your favorite. Right, champ? Noah cheered, rushing over to help. Lena watched them, heart warm but heavy. She knew Ethan was trying, not just to be with her, but to fit into her world. He'd left behind lavish parties, skipped board meetings, and even started teaching Noah basketball every afternoon. But she also saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the calls he declined, the unread messages from James about the company's turmoil. She feared she was pulling him away from the world he truly belonged to. Lena, are you okay? Ethan asked, setting down the groceries, eyes on her. He always noticed when she was quiet. She nodded, voice low. I'm just not used to this. This house, you, everything. I'm scared it'll all disappear, Ethan. I'm scared of the press, your mother, the company. Ethan stepped closer, took her hand. They can't take this away, he said firmly. I choose you and Noah. The company, my mother, the media, they're not more important than our family. Lena looked at him, wanting to believe, but fear lingered. That's easy to say, but what if your company collapses? What if Noah gets dragged into this mess? I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. Ethan pulled her into his arms and whispered, "You're not the reason. You're the reason I live, Lena." He kissed her forehead, and from across the room, Noah giggled. Lena's blushing. She pushed Ethan away playfully and shot Noah a mock glare, but a smile bloomed on her lips. In that moment, it felt like maybe things could be okay, if only for a second. The next day, Ethan and Lena launched a small project, free classes for underprivileged kids in Hunts Point. They used a spare room at the clinic, set up a few wooden desks and a whiteboard. Lena taught reading and writing, while Ethan, awkward at first, told stories about building bridges and skyscrapers that made the kids laugh. Noah joined in, playing with new friends, eyes bright. Lena watched Ethan smile, natural, unguarded, no longer the cold CEO she had once met. But she also noticed the constant pings from James, texts he read and then set aside. One afternoon, as they walked Noah to school, Lena saw a news van parked nearby. She grabbed Noah's hand tightly, heart pounding. "Ethan, they're here again," she whispered, pointing. Ethan followed her gaze, eyes darkening. "Let them," he said flatly. "They want a photo? I'll show them, I'm not hiding." He held Lena and Noah's hands and walked forward, chin high. Flashbulbs popped, but he didn't flinch. Lena looked at him, afraid but in awe. He was fighting for her, but she couldn't help wondering what the cost would be. That night, after Noah had gone to bed, Lena and Ethan sat on the sofa, soft light glowing around them. "Ethan, are you sure?" she asked softly. "About this? About us? Your company? Your mother? They won't just let it go." Ethan took her hand, eyes steady. "I've never been more sure. The company can wait. My mother will have to accept it. But you and Noah, I can't live without you two." Lena rested her head on his shoulder, letting herself believe, for the first time, that they could survive this. "I don't want to lose you either," she whispered. Ethan smiled and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I have something for you." It was a plan for a scholarship fund named after Lena's mother, the Anna Carter Foundation, to help disadvantaged children get an education. "You gave me purpose, Lena. This is how I thank you." Lena read it, eyes misty. She embraced Ethan, saying nothing, but the hug said it all. She knew the road ahead would be rough, media, family pressure, and social judgment. But with Ethan and Noah, she was ready to walk it, even if it meant walking between two worlds. They sat there in their small home, the soft sound of Noah's snores drifting from the next room. Outside, Hunts Point lay quiet, as if shielding them from the storm of the world. Lena closed her eyes and told herself, whatever comes, she won't give up. Not this time. The morning sunlight filtered through the sparse trees of Hunts Point, casting a soft golden hue over the small courtyard in front of the community clinic. Today it had been simply but warmly decorated. Rows of plastic chairs neatly arranged, strings of twinkling lights hung along the wooden fence, and a wooden table draped with a white cloth, adorned with cupcakes and fresh flowers. There was no red carpet, no orchestra, no guests in tuxedos or evening gowns. This was the wedding of Lena Carter and Ethan Blake, an event unlike any other in Manhattan, but full of love and meaning. Lena stood in the clinic's break room, looking at herself in a small wall mirror. She wore a simple white wedding dress, hand-sewn by Mrs. Maria and the neighborhood women. It wasn't glamorous, but every stitch was careful and heartfelt, with little fabric flowers on the shoulder, making her look like a blossom in a field. Her hair was loose, pinned with a small clip Noah had picked. She wore no makeup, but her brown eyes shone, part joy, part nervousness. She clenched her hands, thinking about the journey that brought her here, from collecting bottles in the South Bronx to support Noah, to the day she pulled Ethan from a wrecked SUV, and now standing on the edge of a new life. Mrs. Maria entered, wearing a blue sweater, her smile radiant. "Oh my goodness, Lena, you look like an angel," she said, hugging her tightly. "Today is your day. Don't worry about anything, all right?" Lena smiled, but her voice was soft. "I'm just afraid. Everything feels too perfect, Grandma. What if the press, his mother, what if they ruin it?" Mrs. Maria placed her hands firmly on Lena's shoulders. "They're not getting in here, dear. Ethan made sure of it. Today is just family and friends. No one can touch your happiness." Lena nodded and took a deep breath. She peeked out the window and saw Noah running across the courtyard, dressed in a white shirt and slightly oversized trousers, laughing as he played with neighborhood kids. Ethan stood nearby, also in a plain white shirt, carrying a cooler of sodas and chatting with a few Hunts Point residents. He no longer looked like the cold CEO of Blake Development, but a family man ready to give up everything for her and Noah. The courtyard slowly filled. Neighbors, nurses from the clinic, and a few of Lena's former co-workers from Blake Development arrived, bringing flowers and handmade gifts. There were no reporters. Ethan had hired security to block off the street. Still, Lena knew the press was out there, and Ethan's mother, Margaret, had sent a frosty email. "You'll regret this, Ethan." Lena feared those words might come true, but when she looked at Ethan and saw the love and determination in his eyes, her fear melted away. The ceremony began as the sun climbed higher. Pastor Johnson, a local minister, stood in the center of the courtyard holding an old Bible. Lena stepped out, hand in hand with Noah, who proudly walked her down the aisle, a simple wooden path. Ethan stood waiting, his eyes shining. As she approached, he took her hand and whispered, "You look more beautiful than any dream I've ever had, Lena." She blushed and playfully glared at him, though she couldn't stop smiling. "Don't get cheesy, you," she replied, making everyone laugh. Pastor Johnson began in his deep, warm voice. "Today we witness the union of two souls, not through wealth or fame, but through love and trust." His speech was short, just as Lena and Ethan wanted, simple, like their love. When it was time for vows, Ethan held Lena's hand and looked her in the eye. "Lena Carter," he said, his voice steady and strong, echoing through the courtyard. "I once thought I had everything, money, power, status, but it was all hollow until I met you. You're the girl from the slums who taught me how to live, how to love, how to be real. I promise to stand by you, to protect you and Noah, even if the world turns against us. You are my whole world." Lena began to cry but kept her voice steady. "Ethan Blake," she replied, voice trembling. "I once thought I wasn't worthy of love or happiness. But you found me. You never gave up, even when I ran. You gave me a family, a reason to believe. I promise to stay by your side, no matter how hard it gets. You are my home." Noah, standing nearby, shouted, "Sister Lena, Mr. E, just get married already." Everyone burst out laughing as Pastor Johnson declared, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Ethan pulled Lena into a kiss, gentle but full of depth, as cheers and applause filled the air. The reception happened right there in the courtyard. Neighbors brought food, burgers, fries, and homemade cookies. Kids ran around, adults chatted, and laughter filled every corner. Lena and Ethan cut their wedding cake, a chocolate one baked by Sophia from the clinic, and shared slices with everyone. Noah jumped in with frosting on his cheeks, shouting, "Best wedding party ever!" Lena looked around, her heart full. It wasn't the wedding she dreamed of as a child, but it was perfect in its own way. She watched Ethan playing catch with Noah and the other kids, his white shirt stained with dirt, but his smile beaming. She knew he'd given up a lot, his penthouse, lavish events, maybe even his mother's approval, but he had no regrets. Mrs. Maria sat Lena down, handing her a cup of juice. "See? Happiness doesn't need sparkle. You have Ethan, you have Noah, and you have us. That's enough." Lena nodded, eyes misty. "I know, Grandma. Sometimes I still can't believe I deserve it." "You do," Mrs. Maria said, squeezing her hand. "And Ethan knows that too." As the sun set, Ethan pulled Lena to a quiet corner where the string lights twinkled. "First dance for the bride and groom," he said with a wink. There was no band, just a soft acoustic song playing from his phone. They held each other close, swaying gently under the warm lights, eyes of friends watching with admiration. Noah ran up and joined, squeezing between them, and the three of them danced together, laughing. When the party ended, Ethan and Lena brought a sleepy Noah back to their small house. The boy dozed off on Ethan's shoulder, mumbling about the basketball court. Lena watched them, feeling that every hardship, every headline, every bit of pain had been worth it for this one moment. She leaned on Ethan, whispering, "Thank you for giving me a family." Ethan kissed her hair. "Thank you for giving me a life." They stepped into their home, the warm lights illuminating the three of them, a peaceful, complete family in quiet Hunts Point. Outside, the world might keep judging, but inside this home, they had each other, and that was all that mattered.